Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic edition of DialogBOX, the show that's made up and the points don't matter. Is that the tag for it? Yeah, I don't know. I still haven't come up with one for my own show.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Thanks. Even just like the trail off sentence, that's what really makes it.
Yeah, I mean, whose line is it anyway? Like, you just speak.
The show is made up, ellipsis. The show is in my head. I'm joined by my peppermint mocha as well as three very lovely guests. I'm your host, Laughingboy LP. I mean, you're at the channel. You know what this is. Like LB, and it's at the top or the bottom. I forget how this channel works.
Or in your head.
It's in my head.
Yeah.
Thank you. First off, we have Nintendo brand ambassador and content creator. You can find her over at youtube.com/NintendoFanGirl, as well as recently on TikTok. You made quite a push on TikTok. We've got NintendoFanGirl.
Hello, thanks for having me.
We also have educator in music, VGM artist, streamer, and content creator. You can now hear her contributing flute and saxophone to Code Tycoon. We have SabIrene.
Oh, thank you for mentioning that. That was so cool to record for my first video game.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just like scroll through everyone's feed and be like, what should I? Okay. Yeah, that's what they do. Got it. No, it was really cool to see that. And we also have content creator and podcaster. You can find her Podcast Monsters, as well as the highlight reel. We have Shinjanaytor on the show.
Hello.
How y'all doing?
Good to be here.
Yeah, it's very early. I think, church is just letting out on the East Coast. So everyone's probably just going to get lunch and Popeyes.
I forgot it was a Sunday. I'm going to be honest.
Time is a construct.
Yes.
So
Truly.
But you know what? It's lunchtime in America, in Virginia, New England, wherever the East Coast may be. And why don't just sit down, pop a spell. Maybe it's breakfast over where you're at.
Elsa's touring currently. That's the East Coast right now.
Yes, that's right. So you know what? Just sit back, relax. We're going to talk about the most recent announcement. Rumors for years have been talking about this thing, and now it is finally here. The Nintendo Switch OLED edition, not the Pro edition. Got 4 letters in this name. It's very important. And we're going to kind of talk about our reactions to this. It's created quite a online fervor. You either love it or you hate it. This either works for you or works against you. But we're going to kind of just deliberate a little bit on what our thoughts and feelings are, kind of how we play the Nintendo Switch now and how the OLED kind of affects that for us. And am I recording? I sure am recording. Look, I have to check.
I get it.
So first off, I always do a baseline at the beginning of every episode, and I think that this is a pretty accurate baseline to go off of. But I kind of wanted to talk about our experiences with the Nintendo Switch so far. It's been about 4 years, 4.5 at this rate. You've kind of melded into one way or another how you play the Switch, what kind of games that you play on it. So I just want to kind of go around the room and see, how are we using the Switch right now? Like, how often are you playing it? And what mode are you playing it at? Are you playing it more handheld? Do you even not have a regular Switch? Do you mostly use a Switch Lite? Do you play it docked? What are our thoughts and feelings? NintendoFanGirl, I'll start with you first.
Sure. So, I mean, I love my Switch. My name is NintendoFanGirl, so it's not really shocking. But I
love that PlayStation.
I probably use it daily, on average, even if it's just like 30 minutes at the end of the day. And I just hop between games, because especially lately, so many new games have been coming out. So like I do a round of Mario Golf, or Monster Hunter Stories 2 came out yesterday. Or this week on Friday. I got it yesterday. Still haven't turned it on. But I play almost exclusively in handheld mode. The only time I don't play in handheld mode is when I'm streaming. And for a while, I actually had like my Switch, which was the Switch Lite, and then my streaming Switch. But it became annoying to switch files back and forth. So I ended up I always use my regular Switch and pretty much always in handheld mode.
Perfect. Sab, how about you?
Honestly, about the same. I play my Switch almost every day. Normally at the end of the day after working at my desk all day, it's really nice to sit in bed and like play handheld. The only time I really ever will play docked is if I'm streaming, because honestly, staring at a TV screen for a while hurts my eyes. It's a little bit gentler when I'm sitting playing casually. And I've had my Switch since about like 4 months after the original release, and I clearly enjoy it if I'm still playing it every day. I think like 2019 versus 2020, my hours went up like stupid high because I started gaming a lot more consistently. So I love it. It's like a DS to me. DS was like the thing I played the most growing up. So the fact that it's handheld but I can still play a lot of really crazy games is super nice.
Hmm. And how about you? I always want to. I can't figure out if I'm ever gonna use like your real name or your or your
I have
made
no
up name.
preference. Either one works. But
All right.
so I guess for me, I'm a little bit different than the both of you in that I usually play it docked, especially just because of the pandemic and stuff. And I was always home. I just preferred actually being able to play it on a really big screen. But I do really love handheld systems. Like I feel like same thing with you, Sap. Like I loved the DS, Game Boy Advance. Like I played those to death growing up. And I also loved the 3DS. So when the Switch was first announced, I remember being so excited that I could just, hop into bed and play it before I go to sleep. But I find that I actually very rarely play it in handheld mode nowadays. So usually just docked.
Okay. I personally speaking, I find myself doing undocked a lot. I maybe I shouldn't be outing myself like this, but when I've been working from home quite a lot, so I don't necessarily just want to be out of the office and playing video games all day. But if I'm either stressed out or if I'm taking a break, I like to just have something to play, and mostly that's just kind of gone towards anything handheld. So my Switch is essentially my new Vita. And I just I'll either be playing like any HD remake kind of game or just kind of something I can pick up and put down, which I think, again, the Switch does extremely well. But for the most part, on my downtime, I will probably play docked, preferably, but I just find myself mostly playing undocked because of that. The Switch lets me do it, so I'm just gonna do it. So now we've talked through how we play the Switch. This is gonna kind of go into what we'll be talking about for the rest of the proceedings. We've heard about a Nintendo Switch Pro, some kind of new iteration of the Nintendo Switch. I want to say like 2018-ish. Like it was very soon after the Switch came out. Like it was extremely soon that they were already talking about reiterating on the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
So why do we think that the idea of a Switch Pro was such a hot topic so early on in the Switch's lifespan? And why do you think so many people were eager for one so soon? It was such a, like, as soon as the rumors came out, people were excited or enticed by the idea. I don't think a lot of people were like, this is too soon.
Yeah, that's true.
So why, I guess that for me, it seemed like people already had fixated on the Switch's shortcomings. Especially with certain games not playing like smooth 30 plus frames a second. Personally speaking, I have not really had too many issues with that. I grew up on games where there was going to be a lot of chug or slowdown. So when a game starts dipping in frame rates, it doesn't bother me quite so much, but it seems to bother like a very particular like capital G gamer demographic that is very prevalent, or like they're very vocal on social media like Twitter and what have you. So it seemed to me like people already, like as soon as it came out, people were already all right, where's the better one? Does that kind of ring true for the rest of y'all?
Yeah, I think I started here. So I exclusively talk about Nintendo stuff, so I follow rumors like this really closely. And I think they really kicked up around summer of 2018. And the original rumor that came out was there's going to be a Switch Pro and a Switch Lite. They're both going to come out sometime soon. And the Switch Lite is going to be like the pared down handheld only version, and the Switch Pro is going to be like the upgraded, can play same games as PS4 and 360 or Xbox One, whatever it is. And what ended up happening was we got the Switch Lite, as you all know. But we also, around that same time, got that upgraded Switch model that had just like a better battery and some little minor tweaks. And my theory is that that was the rumor all along. What the thing that started, somebody heard about the upgraded model and the Switch Lite, and that turned into Switch Lite and Switch Pro. And that's yeah, so that's my theory in the first place. But I do think that a Switch Pro, whatever this upgraded now, the OLED version has been in talks or in the works from Nintendo for at least that long. Um, and I think it was just such a hot topic because, well, I think that's just kind of how gamers with a capital G, as you put it, are. That's just what we're always going to be looking towards, whatever the next version is. But I think a big part of it was having other games coming out and on other systems or on PC and saying like, well, how can this hold? How can this system, the Switch, hold up if it can't get clean ports that other systems are getting? I think
Right.
that's part of it.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. I think when it comes to the Switch, they were already one of the things I had already thought about when it came down to having to create a hybrid console is that you're going to have difficulty. Like maybe you'll have comparable games to PS4 and Xbox One, but this is the start of a new generation, and Sony and Microsoft hadn't even come out of the gate yet with their next gen consoles. And so what you were probably going to see was a lot of lag behind in terms of the Switch. And I wouldn't be surprised if within the next couple of years we just stop seeing Switch ports of multi-console games. Or on the other hand, you might start seeing more of what some companies have been doing with the streaming option. So like technically you're not actually playing a Switch version of a game, you're just playing a version that's being streamed off of a PC somewhere else. They've done that already with Resident Evil 7, and there's another game that did it very recently, and I can't remember what it was. I remember Resident Evil 7 being the big one because it was Japan only. I think it cost like a certain number of dollars per month to play the game. So even after you bought it, you still had to do a monthly subscription to continue playing it. I guess to keep the servers alive.
Yeah, probably.
But I mean, you could already see from that point that Nintendo was going to struggle at some point to try to keep up with newer generation consoles. But I mean, already being 5 years into this lifespan, I wouldn't be surprised if we see not a Switch Pro at this point. It would probably just be whatever is next on Nintendo's docket of systems.
Yeah.
SabIrene, do you have any thoughts?
I think kind of what you and Sam were hitting on is like just this concept of we kind of get bored very quickly. I think like when the Switch first came out, we're like, oh my god, this is amazing. This is a huge step up from the Wii U. I remember like looking at the Breath of the Wild differences between the Wii U and the Switch, and they were fairly microscopic. Like the one that stuck out was like more realistic bird sounds, and I'm like, that makes someone buy this console, that's hilarious. It's still a great console, but I think, like, after a while, we're so quick to if something is not the best, it is immediately the worst, and we only view its shortcomings, so I think, like, "Oh, well, there's all these issues with the Switch and blah, 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 blah," like the battery, the Joy-Cons, whatever, so I think like it was very quick, and we have seen updates to consoles a lot where we had the like Game Boy Color, then we had the Advance, then we had the SP, like there was the DS, then they had the
Even
DSi
the
or the
micro?
DS Lite,
Just
the
like
DSi, and the 3DS. We have the Wii, we have the Wii U. It just seemed like a natural succession that we would have it. But I do think you're right that it was a little bit faster than I think in past years because we were so content with where like, oh, like a few games are coming out and that was enough. But because there's so many games coming out all the time, I think we start to just kind of get bored of that console more quickly because we're like, well, these games are coming out. When's the new console coming out if all these new games are coming out? It's become kind of a subconscious association, maybe. Personally, I wasn't really itching for a new model of Switch. I was just kind of like, hey, I'm happy with mine, and as long as it lasts, like I'll use it until it's done. It's kicked the bucket. But I remember
Mhm.
a lot of people around me, within the first year or so, being very intent on when are we getting a new one. I'm like, it just came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think one of the things I remember, I was listening to another podcast, a Pokemon podcast, and the podcast host, who also like streams a lot, was talking about how as soon as Sword and Shield came out, like during that stream, like his first day playing the game, and people were already in chat just kind of going like, what do you think the next one's going to be? Like, when's the next one? It's like, this game
Mhm.
just came out. Like, have you even played it yet? Like,
Yeah.
a lot of the conversation that we've been having kind of reminds me of that, where it's like, we're so quick to consume media to the point where we actually stop consuming it and we only consume the news about it. Like, we're so addicted to the cycle
Yeah.
that the whole thing was just the rumors and the speculations and the YouTube content watching of all the different what ifs and possibilities of something, that when the game finally comes out, it's just reality. We're not going to talk about it anymore. So we're just waiting for the next thing to talk about and speculate on. And we've no longer consumed media. We're just consuming social media.
Ooh, dang.
I mean,
I felt that.
I have a lot of thoughts more so about how everything turned out. And, you know, there's something called mindfulness, and how we interpret media and how we kind of express it once we either get what we want or don't get what we want. But we'll talk about that in a little later. But out of all the rumored features, so there were a lot. I remember the Switch Pro was going to be 100% docked. There was no detachment. One of the prevailing rumor throughout the entirety of this lifespan has been like 4K. 4K 60, and I'm like, come on, guys. First off, what else was there? I mean, basically just like a beefed up system that could handle like, it would be like on par with the PS5. Out of any possible rumor or any features that people had discussed or thought that could happen with the Switch Pro, was there anything that caught your eye? Was there anything that you were actually looking forward to in a quote unquote Pro model?
So I feel like for me, I'm kind of in a weird subgroup where I wanted a Switch that maybe had a little bit more processing power, but like I don't need it to be comparable to a PS5 or an Xbox One or anything like that because I have a PS4. So if I'm gonna get one of those like, big games that are available on all of the systems, then I'm gonna get it for a PS4. I'm not gonna get it for my Switch. And just being someone who's always been, I've always called myself a Nintendork because that's been my favorite system always. I feel like Nintendo systems are always a little bit different. Like, it's never going to be on the level of PlayStation and Xbox, and I'm totally okay with that. Like, I'm fine with that. But even just a little bit more processing power so that I can go to my friend's Animal Crossing island and it's not super laggy because they have just a gorgeous island and it's filled to the brim with stuff. Like, even just a little bit more power for something like that is all I really wanted, as well as maybe like a bigger and a better screen, which is like, okay, now we've got the OLED version. But I feel like I was kind of more on par with what Sab was saying, that like I have the launch Switch, so I'm fine with mine, other than like some of the small, things that could be improved, like the battery life and stuff. But I feel like the biggest rumor that caught my eye was just processing power.
Yeah, agreed. I think like even the 4K, like the rumors that the dock would be up-resing uh older games to 4K and stuff like that. Like I think they were a little far-fetched because it's too difficult. I mean, with putting it really simply, it's too difficult to make a game that was not built for 4K look like anything good in 4K. So even if you had something that was built to upres, I think by the time we get something like that, we're gonna be looking at a Switch 2 or whatever it is, and they're gonna be new games built for that. These games were designed with the Switch in mind, not with 4K crazy processing power in mind. But the rumor that I was interested in was just more processing power that can fix some of the games that chugged just a little bit. I mean, most games don't have too much issues, but some of them do have like a little bit of a sticking point, we'll put it. And if you just built a bigger, better Switch with more processing power, you have the possibility of creating new games that aren't necessarily like new Switch games. They're games that work on old Switches too, but can be played at kind of like a higher capacity than the older Switch system could play them. So that would have been nice, but it's okay.
Sab?
I honestly, I don't follow rumors a whole lot, so I didn't really know about any of the rumored Nintendo Switch stuff. Because to me, part of what I love about games is just the mysticism of it all. I like going in very blind, not knowing anything, and having to figure it out. And that's kind of how I am with consoles. So people have been talking about, I'm like, like whatever happens, happens. I would say the only thing, I don't know if this was a rumor, but something that would be cool that they could potentially do is like, because the Switch screen, it's fairly big compared to most other handheld consoles we've seen before, how like doing things with like touchscreen. I mean, what's nice is that we have the two different sticks, like, with each Joy-Con, so they can serve very different functions. But I'm thinking mostly about like the Gen 4 remakes, because Gen 4 is my favorite. And a big thing I'm very curious about, I'm like, how are contests and poffins gonna work if they choose to include those things? Because poffins is, you spin with the
Yeah.
stylus
Yeah,
clockwise and
just use the Joy-Con,
counterclockwise.
right?
Yeah, a lot of people are saying Joy-Con. I'm like, I wonder if they would ever entertain, stylus for certain style games or certain ports of games that were very stylus heavy, like the WarioWare games and
I would
stuff.
love that. I would love that.
Yeah, or just touchscreen capability for certain things. I know you can do it on the home screen, but not so much in the
Yeah.
game
I've always
themselves.
felt the same way.
Yeah, part of
Yeah,
the
stylus wouldn't be
problem
a bad idea.
is they want because every game in theory can be played the same, whether it's docked or handheld,
Right.
with a few exceptions.
Right.
That's what makes it a big pain
Yeah.
in like how would you incorporate if
No, for
you
sure.
if you went big on the touchscreen, how do you incorporate that when you're playing docked mode?
Yeah, that's
It would
my
be nice.
yeah, I mean, the Clubhouse piano, I hate that I can't, like, do anything with it when I stream because it's only touchscreen. I'm like,
Right.
"Dang, I wish they had some sort of crossover," but, again, it is what it is. I'm not upset. I'm not like, they needed to include that. That has been the missing link in this entire Switch lore. I don't know, but you get the point. It's not a
Yeah.
big deal to me.
Well,
That
there
kind
was
of makes
The
me think,
story.
like, I've always wanted if they could somehow port things like how the Wii U was, because one of my favorite Wii U games is Nintendo Land. I love Nintendo Land, and
Mhm.
I say to my friends all the time, like, they should make, just even if it was just like an HD Switch remake, that's totally fine. I just want Nintendo Land for the Switch. And then my friends are like, well, they probably wouldn't do that because, like what you were saying, Sam, it has to be playable on docked and handheld mode, and they wouldn't do the like cross thing where it's a screen on the Switch, but then you can play it on the TV. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's a good point. But I would really love if they could somehow incorporate ideas from the Wii U into the Switch, because I guess this is because I'm a Nintendo dork, but I will defend the Wii U until the day I die. So I think people give
It
it a bad
plays
rep.
Bayonetta better than the Switch does.
Ooh.
Really? I
From what
haven't
I've been told, yes.
I haven't played. I own it on the Switch, but I haven't played it on the Switch yet. I was gonna say the whole thing with two screens, or the great thing about two screens that we had with the DS and we had with the Wii U, we lose with the Switch. And it would be so cool if there was a way
Yeah.
we could do something, because
Yeah.
that would make it easier to port DS and 3DS games to the Switch. You could have handheld for the bottom screen and your TV for the top screen, and you could do games like Zelda Four Sword Adventures, where you have multiple people playing with their own screens and then the TV for like the main game. And I wonder, this is like getting way out there, but I wonder if in the future, when they've already like convinced everyone to buy a Switch and now it's time for a Switch 2, they say, well, you can still use all of your Switches. Those are like now your personal screens, something like that. But, you know, not to start new rumors, but
I wonder how people would take that.
probably
Because
not
it's
good.
kind
People
of
don't like things.
probably not well,
Yeah,
but we
no.
also know anything Nintendo does is not going to be received well, and then it'll just get bought. No, actually, you know that the Game Boy Advance to GameCube feature was something that was really cool that I really wish got utilized a lot more often. Like,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, it just kind of goes to show with the legacy of games like Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles and just how poorly they got remade. Yeah, it'd be really nice to kind of see that functionality come back in some way. Maybe they just make a cheaper screen type system, or
Or
they
use
just
your phones,
go.
smart.
I mean, they could go back to sort of everyone has phones, right? Yeah, that could work too. Sony has proven that that's a workable concept. They've come up with a couple of games that can be controlled by your phone. Yeah, it actually might work out pretty well. That's a touchscreen. I think the one thing that I wanted, I mostly got with the OLED. Like, again, I made the joke before, but I'm a Vita person. Like, Vita means life. And I thought it was a great handheld that was just too soon. Like, it was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
That's right.
Aw.
Plays a mean game of Persona 4 Golden. But the OLED was one of the biggest selling points for me because, and I didn't even realize it until I played it, right? Like, everything looks so good. The colors look so like poppy. And when they reiterated and did like a Vita 2000 edition, they took out that OLED screen, just replaced it with the regular, just LCD or LED. And it's a difference. Like, everything looks washed out. You can see kind of the backlight is more prevalent. And so I wouldn't say that the Switch's screen is bad, but I know that the Switch OLED is going to look a lot better. I think the only other thing I really wanted was more memory. And processing power, I think, is one thing, but I don't want to have to like wait until there's a Black Friday sale to get a 1
Right.
terabyte SD card.
Right.
So moving on, it's been years. We've heard about it since I would say like middle of 2018. The rumors kept going on and on. We thought we were going to hear something before E3 and didn't. I remember a lot of us being on like red alert. Like, I'm part of Zelda Universe, and we were just kind of like, all right, something could happen today. Something might happen. Maybe tomorrow, but something's going to happen soon. And then it just happened, middle of a Tuesday. Like Nintendo does.
Mm-hmm.
Now that the Switch OLED has happened, now that's out in the open, do you feel like, and we've kind of already talked about expectation, but do you feel like this kind of meets the expectation? Are you accepting this? Like, is this a acceptable thing now that it's out in the open? How did you feel when you saw the trailer?
I mean, I hate to say, like let down or disappointed, but like in some to be clear, like I'm going to buy whatever Nintendo puts out, but in some ways, like just purely because the rumors went so far for so long, which stinks because I hate that I ever let myself, because I try to not to get excited about something that is not straight from Nintendo's mouth. Never do that. Never listen to rumors. But like because the rumors seemed relatively credible and they all pretty much said 4K and like some kind of improved processing power and a bigger, better screen, because of that, that's kind of what I was expecting. So when the announcement came out, it's not that I was upset by the announcement, but more that like, oh, so that's it. Like that's the whole thing. And I'm fine with it at the end of the day. Like I, again, only really play in handheld mode, and I'm looking forward to getting the bigger screen, and the improved audio is actually a pretty big deal because the audio is a little iffy sometimes. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy about the announcement, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't like a little. I felt like it was a smaller thing, and that's why it was announced on a Tuesday. A smaller thing than I was expecting. I do kind of think they could have actually shown it at E3. I think it could have been tied with their Metroid Dread announcement because it all kind of goes together.
I'm kind of shocked that it wasn't. Like, surely it was prepped and ready to go by then, right? Like,
I
I don't
assume
know.
so.
Yeah. But I think I'm kind of in the same boat as you, where definitely a little disappointed, just again based on all of the rumors we heard, which is disappointing. But at the same time, when I was watching the trailer, I was kind of hyped, honestly. But I don't know. I feel like just anything Nintendo announces, I'm always like, oh, like what are they gonna include this time? What's new? Even just something small is like, wow, those white Joy Cons though, like that looks really nice.
It'll
But
go great with my PS5.
I don't know. Like I haven't firmly decided yet if I'm gonna get it. Like at first, when I saw the trailer and I saw that it was coming out in October, which so much stuff was coming out in October, and that's my birthday month. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna treat myself. I'm gonna get it. Like I have the launch Switch. Like I deserve this. And then I thought about it a little bit more and I was like, well, I mostly play it dock. Like, do I really need it? So I keep going back and forth and like I feel like there's just like this voice in the back of my head that's saying like the real Switch Pro's coming. Just hold out. And I'm like, oh no, I'm falling into the rumors again, aren't I? So I just hate myself. That's really what it's all about. I get it.
I mean, that's also kind of a worrisome thing because Nintendo, I mean, kind of Sony, Microsoft, they're all prone to this where they just reiterate and reiterate. So we'll have maybe 2 or 3 consoles every generation per system. And I would hate it if I bought this OLED edition and then, like next year the Switch Pro is announced. I think at this rate, personally speaking, I don't really see them doing anything that would then, like, I feel like a Switch Pro is out of the picture at this rate. If they are going to do it, like we've been kind of saying before, it's probably going to be whatever the next system Nintendo's going to come out with. And who even knows if it's even going to be this, dual console Switch, handheld docked thing. It works, I think. I would be happy if they did it. But I don't know. I guess at this rate, like a Switch Pro is out now. But who knows? And that's the problem. Like if I buy this OLED and then I find out that in 2 years they have one that has like 2 terabytes of memory and plays a mean game of Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart somehow, like, I would just kind of be like, oh well, dang, like I missed out.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sam's point earlier about how that like kind of really quietly released second version of the Switch that just has like a little bit better battery life and stuff like that. That was actually the Switch Pro all along. Like that's a brain scratcher. I'm gonna be thinking about that for a while because now I'm like, wow, that's really gonna rethink how I frame just everything and all these rumors. And I'm like, honestly, that would be a very Nintendo move, But at the same time, when you look at like, the 3DS history, you've got the new 3DS models that came out. So, at this rate, you never know what Nintendo's gonna do.
That's kind of it, right? Like Nintendo kind of does what Nintendo wants to do, and it's interesting because we always kind of look at the choices Nintendo makes and we're baffled by it, right? Like we're kind of like so personally speaking, I saw it and I saw the trailer and my initial thought was, again, like, that's it? Okay. I think that the OLED screen is great. I think honestly, like everything that they've done makes absolute sense. It makes absolute sense. Like the kickstand on the original Switch is
Garbage.
tiny, like it breaks. It's a clear issue.
It's not good.
The OLED screen is going to be great. Like I know a lot of people kind of saw it and they were like, "Oh, OLED screen sucked." But if the Switch had everything else they wanted, they'd be praising the OLED screen.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's a great upgrade. as a launch Switch owner, I'm going to now have a better battery. If you bought a Switch like 2 months ago, it's not going to be that much more significant. I think there are just other minor tweaks to it that for me make sense, and I was like, you know what, this is your reiteration. But yeah, I wasn't like impressed. I think that's kind of how I felt. Like it just wasn't like impressive. There were things in my head where I was kind of like, I really didn't think that any of these rumors were going to be possible because they are so up there.
Mm-hmm.
But the OLED screen, I think, was the one thing that people talked about. Like Nintendo ordered a bunch of OLED screens from Samsung. I think you can connect the dots there. So yeah, I wasn't impressed, but I think I will probably buy it as somebody who likes to play docked, but just turns out not to a lot. We are kind of slowly coming back to things. So when travel starts becoming more prevalent, then it will work out for me pretty well. But yeah, honestly, it's like, it's not like I'm very whelmed at the announcement. So that was kind of my feelings on it. Did we get everyone for this question?
Real quick, I'll throw in my thing because I actually hadn't I saw like a little bit of the trailer, but it was when Laughingboy reached out to me and was like, "Hey," I was like, "Oh yeah, I should really watch this in more detail." So I watched it and I don't know, I was like, "All right, this is cool." Like, I wasn't like overjoyed, ecstatic like when Gen 4 remakes got announced or seeing like Danganronpa ported to Switch. Like those were very like strong reactions, like good, but um at the end of the day, how I look at it is, it's cool that it's getting an update. I like that the oh my god, what's the thing called on the back?
Kickstand.
The
The
kickstand.
kickstand,
Like I
yeah.
like that it can go more. I'm always terrified to break mine.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, even if I don't like it, I'm like, there are other people out there that are gonna enjoy this, and that makes me happy. And the fact that Nintendo didn't just say, "All right, time for a brand new console. We're throwing the Switch out the window," even though we're putting all these games out in the next few months. Like they're still trying to work on it, but like you said, Nintendo's gonna do what they're gonna do at the end of the day. And honestly, I respect them for it. That they don't cater to other people. It's about what they want to do as Nintendo.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, I don't think Nintendo is a stupid company. Like, we always see what they do, and and again, like I said, we're baffled by it. But like, they have to be looking at something. They have to be looking at some kind of numbers. They have to be looking at how people are playing on the Switch, how people are using them, what games they're playing on them. The Switch Lite was specifically for like very targeted demos. Like, Nintendo's not just gonna throw a Switch Lite out there, being like, maybe somebody wants this. I don't know. Like, they're not going to throw out a new iteration of a Nintendo Switch. And some people kind of said, like, oh, maybe it had something to do with the shortages and people not being able to get parts as well as they could. And I also don't necessarily think that that's true. I think it's possible that Nintendo looked at the possibility of adding new things to the console, and then they may have just seen, like, we don't really need to do this. Really, and personally speaking, the things that they need to fix are the things that they are sort of legally obligated to fix. Like, Nintendo's never going to say that the Joy-Cons are still busted. And if people, I remember people being upset that, like, oh, they never fixed the Joy-Cons. The Joy-Cons are the same. And I'm like, Nintendo's not going to say that they fixed it, because if they say that they fixed it, that implies that they were still broken. And they can't legally say that right now. There's court stuff going on. So if the president comes out and goes, hey, by the way, we fixed the Joy-Cons, then it's like, oh, well, were they still broken? Like, now you have like this whole thing going on. So I think any of the fixes that Nintendo does make to those Joy-Cons are going to be very quiet. You're not going to know, but all of a sudden I don't have drift anymore and whatever. But yeah, like, I think those are the things that Nintendo really needs to focus on. Like, they're online. They're really trying to focus on that. They're trying to give attention to that. To me, it doesn't really matter that the Ethernet port is integrated into the console, but that's still cool. It kind of shows to me that they're like, okay, we think that this is important enough to not charge you $29.99 for an additional adapter.
Mm.
So, but like Nintendo's not stupid. They look at numbers, they look at the marketing, they do the research, and the Switch OLED is a culmination of that. They went, this is how people are using the Switch. This is what we think are really important to improve on, and we're going to send that out to people, and we believe that this is the right way to go. Which actually is my next question. So do the rest of y'all think that Nintendo made the right call here? Do you see the OLED system working out for Nintendo? Do you think this working out for the consumers as well?
I think so.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, something interesting to add is they're not replacing anything with the Switch OLED. They're selling it alongside the original model and the Lite. So I think at the end of the day, it's just an option for people who are buying a Switch. And for $50 more, you can get a better screen, a bigger screen, and some other enhancements. Like, yeah, I would, especially if it was my only Switch, I would definitely go for that. I think a big thing that they probably looked at too is what people are willing to pay for a Switch, because if they were enhancing more than just the screen, you're looking at a minimum $400 price tag, and now you're getting up competitive with other current gen consoles. And I think Nintendo's afraid to go that route, probably for good reason. I have a feeling that would yield a whole new series of complaints as soon as you get up to the 400 and higher price tag. But yeah, I agree with everything that you just said, because Nintendo surely evaluates how people are using the Switch, and they also evaluate how people used and purchased the 3DS consoles, which was an incredible selling system. And one thing they probably realized from the 3DS, the new 3DS sales, was that people did not like when they released a system and released games that could only be played on the new version of the system. And there were so few of those games because...
Yeah, there's like 5.
Yeah, I don't know how much of it was like they started to do it and were like, ooh, maybe not continue doing this. But I think they knew like the Switch user base is massive, and they wouldn't release a system that could play games that the older versions of the system could not, because they've tried to do that once and mixed results.
Yeah, and I think hopping off of that, like Nintendo, I feel like saw a lot of people buy Switches just last year.
Right.
So pretty much a year ago, their sales skyrocketed on consoles. Like they were becoming hard to find because people wanted something to do during a pandemic. And as everyone's saying, like Nintendo is at a good price point. They are the cheapest next current gen system you can buy. And if you're not looking for games like God of War, if you're not looking for games like The Last of Us Part 2 or Halo or anything like that, it is a very reasonably priced system. It is a great console for families, and it's at a very competitive price point. I think, like you said, if you start beefing the specs, then all of a sudden you're now asking for a price that's comparable to those other consoles. And I don't think Nintendo wants to compete. They don't really have to.
Yeah.
Like the Switch was selling gangbusters. So to release like a beefed up super console a year after and telling people who just bought like the Animal Crossing Special Edition Switch, like, sorry, your system sucks now. Like, it's not fair to them. And you don't necessarily want to create a console that's, I think the other issue for me is that if you beef up the system, you now start telling developers, you can make better games with this. And so people who choose not to upgrade are going to suffer for that. And people who do get the upgraded system might still see those issues, because now a developer is saying, I'm going to, sky's the limit. I'm now going to do more with my game than I would have had I used this hardware. Now I have better hardware. And so you're still going to probably see like frame dips and things like that, because now I can do more. So I don't really think it's going to fix all the problems that people are saying that the Switch even has.
Yeah.
Right. I think
Sab or Shin?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, with what Sam was saying, is that they're being sold alongside It's not like this is the definitive edition of the Switch and you can't
Mm-hmm.
use the old ones anymore. It's not like old operating systems where after a while they're like, sorry, we're not going to let you run anything anymore. No big
Ugh.
deal. Um, but I like that it's being sold alongside. It's not you have to buy this in order to continue to play our games. It's not locked behind a new system, which I really appreciate because I don't really want to upgrade. I'm someone that I will use technology until it breaks on me. So like I'm kind of stingy when it comes to that regard, but if my Switch was on its last legs, like I would buy the OLED Switch, no doubt. I wouldn't be like, "No, that is, like, too lowly of a console," or like, "Oh, that's not a big enough upgrade where I'm not gonna spend that
Yeah.
money," and they're definitely so affordable, and that's what I enjoy. Like, I've looked into getting, like, a PlayStation 4 even now, and it's only, like, $50 cheaper than a Switch, and I'm like, "Am I really gonna buy a $250 console to play a game versus my Nintendo Switch where I have, like, over 50 games that I can play? No, I will find a different way to play this game." So, I don't know. I'm a big Nintendo person anyway, but I like that they're starting to port a lot of other titles to it, and again, just, like, it looks really great. I get if it's someone's first Switch, it's a great first Switch to have. So I think they made the right call, especially how they're selling it that in the trailer they show you all three of the switches. It's not just like this is the one. So I enjoyed that about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like. Oh, go ahead, Chin.
I was just gonna kind of piggyback off of that and saying, like, I feel like one thing you mentioned was like, for people that don't have a Switch, this would be their new one. I feel like the OLED is for very specific markets for those that don't have a Switch and are planning to mostly play in handheld mode, but they would still be playing docked because then you'd get the OLED versus the Lite. But also for those that have a launch Switch and mostly play it in handheld mode, I feel like that OLED screen is really going to make a big difference. But especially someone like Andrew, you said you would love to be able to play it docked more often, but you just end up playing it in handheld mode. So then the OLED is really a good fit for you, because there is still the Switch Lite, but that's also for very specific consumers. So at the end of the day, they probably did make a right call, and I think it'll still be successful.
Yeah, I think coming off of that, it again like the Switch, the general Switch. I mean, personally speaking, I think that the Switch is going to the original model is probably going to just be phased out, and that's just typical. I think that the OLED will probably stay around for. I mean, it kind of works where the Switch base model is kind of for anyone. Like anybody that wants a Switch, you don't necessarily want to pay too much for it. Here you go. It's right there for you. I think the Switch Lite is great for younger gamers or like other particular demographics because the Joy-Cons are, glued essentially to the system. I think the pad is at least better, more reminiscent of their older control pads. I think it's great for that. And then you have the OLED model, which it's kind of like if you maybe have an older, gamer like in their late teens and they want, the bigger, better technology, you can always get the OLED model for them. Like if you're trying to look at your first Switch, the three options are pretty great and they're not confusing. Like I don't particularly, like it's not like an Xbox situation where it's like, I want the new Xbox and there's like 5 Xboxes that you can choose from. Or, eventually you're just going to have Xbox on your TV anyway. But like, I think that having 3 models, it's not complicated. It's very easily tiered depending on what kind of person you are or how you like to play video games. So and again, still competitive. I think 350. Well, I think the original Switches came out at 300, right? When
Yeah.
they first came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So $50 more for me, technically speaking, I get all these fun little benefits. Now, that being said, we're going to hop on to our final question. So, as fans and as consumers, this is kind of off the Nintendo Switch and kind of more as like how we consume video game media in general. Do you feel like that we're building up expectations based on rumors and speculations? Like, how do you believe that we can better handle ourselves when the expectations we create in our minds aren't met? And I'll just kind of start by saying, like, I don't particularly see any problem with reading about future news, rumors, speculations, things like that. I've kind of been doing it my whole life because I bought gaming magazines back in the day, and a lot of publications didn't necessarily have all the facts straight, and you basically kind of went month to month getting more information as you went along and seeing how things develop. There's sort of I tried not to. Like, I didn't want to get my feelings hurt. I didn't want to have my expectations dashed or hopes and dreams just completely slashed in front of my eyes. So I was like, oh, I'm just not going to watch rumors. I'm not going to listen to that. I'm not going to bother with that because I don't want to get my hopes up. But what I found was that, like, it made me not look forward to anything. So it kind of gave me this, like, you know, pessimistic viewpoint of looking forward to things. And I realized I wasn't getting, you know, I saw all these other people like getting really hyped up for things and they were getting really excited. And I was like, I kind of want to feel that again. So I don't think there's any problem with reading about rumors or like even having your own speculations as to, like, I'm sure everyone who saw the Diamond and Pearl trailers are sitting there thinking to themselves, like, oh, I wonder if this is going to be back in it. Like, are they going to do this? Like, for me, I missed out on a lot of those event Pokemon. So, you know, I have my Shaman, but I don't have Darkrai. So, like, I would love to get those. Like, are they going to be back in it? What are they going to do about this? You know, that and the other thing. So it's always fun. But when the reality comes to play, like when the Switch OLED is announced, when, you know, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl come out and certain things are missing or they're not up to par or we have to use HMs again, like, how do we kind of navigate, how can we better navigate ourselves through those moments where the expectations are not met?
I think like a big part of it is understanding that there's not always gonna be something every time with like a Nintendo Direct, those types of events. And I think you're absolutely right. There's nothing wrong with like looking into rumors and stuff like that. But it's when you then we have this tendency to translate like, oh, if someone heard it, it must be true, so that's gonna happen. We kind of get in that mindset where we take that rumor to be fact rather than just a possibility. So it's keeping an open mind about it. We kind of get tunnel vision, I think, when we see things that we're excited about, whether they are actually announced or rumors, because that's a big thing circulating in my community is like, oh, well, like they better have platinum content, they better have all this. I'm like, honestly, I'm like, I don't care. I'm just happy that we're getting this game on a console again. I'm like, because it's my favorite. I'm like, if they choose to include those things, that's fantastic. If they don't, I'm not gonna cry and break my Switch in half, you know. But just again, kind of going back to what I said about the OLED, I'm happy knowing that at least there's something that other people will enjoy because I am not the only gamer on the planet, and other people's excitement does make me excited. There are some people. There are times where after a direct or something, I've talked with people and they're like, "That was garbage." I'm like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "There was lots of great stuff." They're like, "Well, I've played all those games before," and I'm like, "I'm sorry." I'm like, I haven't." I'm like, "I know that that feeling sucks because like there was nothing for you, but like." I don't know, it makes me happy that there's stuff for other people to
That's so
play. So
wholesome.
Yeah.
yeah, so I think it's important to balance like you can have expectations and theories, but remembering that Nintendo's going to do Nintendo at the end of the day and that if it doesn't happen, they're not personally attacking you. Like they're just doing what they think is best for them and maybe something else will come along that you'll enjoy, but try and keep an open mind. It's like, all right, you might not get, you know, I don't know, what you're looking for, but maybe there's something else that might pique your interest or giving something a try. I get that a lot
Hmm.
of it's also like, well, we don't want to waste our money. We're paying for our own games now. We want to make sure it's worth it. But I don't know,
Yeah.
keeping an open mind and remembering that there's going to be something sooner or later.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, but I think it's important to remember, uh, I'm pro rumors, weird way to put it. I read rumors, I read speculations, I create videos talking about my speculation, so it would be completely uh, against everything I know to say like, no, don't pay attention to those. But I think it's really important to not let speculations become expectations because as soon as that happens, like you're asking for trouble. You're just going to disappoint
Yeah.
yourself at the end. And it's unfortunate when, as like a community, as a Nintendo fan community, we like build up the same expectations, because that is what leads to like this back and forth of people feeling validated by other people who are also disappointed in their expectations not being met, even though the expectations are based on nothing. Like there's nothing that Nintendo said that we should be disappointed by, but we are, because of our collective expectation, which was born from these rumors and these speculations. So there's a fine line there, somewhere in there. At the end of the day, I think, just like Sab said, we gotta be open-minded and not be upset when there's an announcement that's not made for us specifically, because there are things that are for other gamers out there, and that's fine. There's always going to be like a direct that is the best direct for one person and the worst direct for another person. So it is what it is.
Yeah, that's so true. I feel like this kind of issue you just see time and time again with literally any fan base or community, even outside of gaming. Just it all stems from passion, because people are really passionate about something. So they're going to talk about rumors and speculations and what they really want to see in some kind of upcoming project. But because of that constant theorizing and discussing of potential rumors, then a lot of people just end up becoming disappointed with whatever the real outcome is. And I feel like the Gen 4 remix is like kind of a really great example of that, because Gen 4 is also my favorite Pokemon gen, and Pokemon's like one of my favorite things ever. So I was literally crying when I saw the trailer, and I was so happy with it. And then I immediately go online, and you had like two camps of people being like, "Oh man, what are these graphics? They're garbage." And then other people were like, "I'm so excited! It's so cute!" Blah blah blah. And I was just kind of floored by it, because people had been like demanding Nintendo and the Pokemon Company for Gen 4 remakes for so long that, of course, when we finally get it, someone finds something to complain about and be disappointed about, because there were probably some kind of rumors that it would be closer graphic wise to, Sword and Shield. So then people are going to be disappointed. And, at the end of the day, it's just kind of, it's always going to happen. It's kind of inevitable that people will have these expectations in their head, and then they'll be disappointed. But, Nintendo, at the end of the day, they're a company, they're a business, and they've probably had all of these plans, scheduled for years. So they're going to do what they're going to do. It all comes down to that again.
Yeah, I think for me, it always comes down to word choice. I think one of the things that really bothered me throughout a lot of the rumors and or especially like the content that was being created around it, was this idea that Nintendo has to do this. Nintendo should do this. Nintendo must do this. Like, these are all the things that Nintendo has to do for the Switch to be competitive with the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, Switch is selling.
They don't have to
It
do
is
anything.
doing, yeah, they're doing really well. And this is maybe a really good PS3. Like, like they don't have to. Like, Nintendo makes their own games. They probably, it would help them to have that third-party support. But that third-party support doesn't have to look like the way it does now. They don't have to just take a game that's already been made for a different console and just make a Switch version of it. They can just make Switch games. Like, the idea that Nintendo has to do something or otherwise they're going to fail really starts to frame the narrative of what your expectation then becomes, because when you use those very judgmental words like should, has to, or they ought to have done that, you're now creating an expectation, and that gets framed in your mind that way. Like, if you really just say, this is what I want, this is what I'd like, then you can at least kind of say that, but then nobody is looking at that and going like, oh, this is now becoming fact. Like, the more that people perpetuated the rumors, and the more people that kind of like, and again, like, I'm sitting here talking about the Nintendo Switch, so just like you, Sam, I can't really sit here and say like this is stupid, because we're doing it right now. But it's the idea of how do you get the message out, and how is it interpreted, because one of those things you have control over, and the other thing you don't. So if you try to like frame the narrative for yourself that it's different, like this is what you want, not necessarily what you're going to get, or not necessarily what Nintendo should be doing, then I feel like that kind of helps you. And then once the eventual reality comes out, you can kind of sit here and go like, it's not what I wanted. And again, you don't have to buy it. Nobody's telling you to. And it can be disappointing. Like that feeling of disappointment, totally valid. But how do you react to that disappointment? How do you frame that disappointment? If you go out and make a YouTube video and say like, this is bullshit, Nintendo should have never done this. Like, how dare they? I want my 4K. I mean, really think about it. Like, you wanted it. You didn't get it. It's frustrating. It's disappointing. Mm-hmm. But are you like, you can't ruminate on that all day. If it inspires you to make a video about it, if it inspires you to stream and invite your friends over to talk about what just happened, then all power to you. But how are you going to then let that negative energy out? Or how do you kind of take that negative energy and be mindful of how you're going to handle it, I guess. Mm-hmm. We kind of live in this perpetual motion of like constant rumor analysis, feedback, and then like I said, like the game or the thing comes out and we just drop it and we're on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. And we haven't even consumed the thing that we were talking about for the last 2 years.
Right.
I think like, again, your feelings are perfectly valid. Anybody's feelings should be perfectly valid, but how do you express that? How do you be mindful of expressing that feeling and emotion to the point where it's emotionally healthy for you? Not necessarily emotionally healthy for everyone else, but take care of yourself rather than trying to like ruminate on those negative feelings. It's frustrating. It's disappointing. Oh, go ahead.
I think
no.
I think part of it's also that we're so fast. There's not a whole lot of filter and processing time between when we have our thoughts and when they end up on, a YouTube video, a tweet, like during the announcement. Like, I don't check Twitter until like a few hours after a direct, because otherwise it's people live tweeting it. I'm like, I don't need to see this. I want to see it through my lens first and foremost. But I think when we don't take that processing time to really reflect before we get our thoughts together, like, it's one thing if you're really excited, but if you're like really angry, like, again, you can be angry, but think about the best way to convey that sentiment without making others feel bad that they're excited about something. And just putting yourself in a really negative, swirling, permeated state. So I think like that's another thing is, sometimes I'll chat with a friend as we're both watching the direct, but it's someone where I know that they're not looking for anything specific. They're very they're a chill lowercase g gamer. But
I do like the idea. I don't want like I don't want casual and hardcore. I want lowercase and capital G.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's important because I think about when I'm upset about something, not related to a game announcement. I like to take time before I bring it to someone because otherwise I'm just like and I don't get anything done, and I'm at that point I'm just bothering everyone else and I'm not doing any favors for me. So that's why I think that's something to keep in mind too. Like whenever I watch directs, I make it full screen so I don't have to read the chat of people just
oh yes,
the chat's
I always turn chat off.
Over and over again, and then being like,
it's awful.
I'm like,
no Smash announcement during my PlayStation State of Play. How dare they?
Yeah. But that's the whole thing. Like that's what I do to take care of myself during directs. Is I'm like, all right, don't look at social media until you have taken it all in, and make sure you can't see the chat. Those are the things I do to take care of myself, and I think. Again, just like taking that processing time. Not saying you can't be angry, but think about why are you really angry and what is the best way to convey this anger? Because it's not by screaming like "frick Nintendo!" I feel like there's better ways to do it.
Yeah.
And if not to help, I mean, it is, in my opinion, it's healthier to keep a positive mindset for your own sake. But if not to help yourself, or if not to help other gamers, keep in mind also that like when these companies, not just Nintendo, when these game companies are looking for user feedback, they're going to listen to somebody saying, I really wanted to see XYZ long before they listen to why didn't Nintendo do this? Nintendo should, or Nintendo needs to release whatever. Like, clear, concise, and thought through constructive feedback will be taken by a company before angry comments. And that's important, because Nintendo and all of these companies, I guarantee you, do look at aggregate feedback, and look at sentiment, and look at what kind of things people are asking for and where their expectations are. But they also need to see comments that make sense. And inflammatory things are nothing. They're outliers that get thrown in a pile somewhere.
Yeah, it doesn't add to the conversation.
Yeah, and hopping off of that, like, immediately, like, my first thought is be really mindful about who you're speaking to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I'm going to Nintendo's Twitter account, I'm not talking to Shigeru Miyamoto.
No.
Right? Like, I'm talking to somebody who is working their social media account, who doesn't have a choice.
Right.
They're just trying to get the message out there, and as soon as you start screaming at them, like, they have such a high turnover rate because it's just constant abuse from complete and total strangers, but like thousands of comments per day. Like, I can't look at Nintendo's tweets anymore because you just scroll down and immediately see, like, bring back National Dex or something like that, or, you know, bring Sora for Smash. Like, it's just constant trolling garbage. So, like, again, it's Nintendo, and especially if it's inflammatory, big companies not going to listen to it. You've invalidated your own feelings because of the way that you excuse me, because of the way that you get your message out. Like, if you're unhappy about the situation, I think it was 2 weeks ago, Niantic had done this whole announcement about Pokemon Go. A lot of the bonuses and benefits that they had started during the pandemic, they're now rolling back. Nobody likes this. Everyone thinks it's bad. It hinders accessibility. People who can't go outside, even before the pandemic, are now kind of like, I can't play this game anymore if they roll these features back. But if you go out and shout at their community leader or their community manager to the point where they have to leave and take like a hiatus because they can't handle it, you've invalidated your own feelings. And so you are perfectly validated with feeling, this upsets me, this doesn't work for me. I don't, why I can't understand why Nintendo does this or why Niantic did this. But when you let that feeling out, be really careful about who you're talking to, or be really careful about how you frame it, because framing it totally changes whether or not people listen to you and how they interpreted it. And if they interpret it positively, great. If they interpret it negatively, like, I think the other thing is, as Sab was saying, like, don't rain on somebody's parade, but also, like, people who are thinking that this is a good thing are now looking at the people thinking it's a bad thing and saying, like, you know, why do you, this, it's a good thing. Why are you saying this is a bad thing? So don't, on the other side of the fence, like, try to at least see from the other person's perspective why it's not a good thing, even if you feel like it is. Because, and again, like, getting the message out will really help. Getting the message out in a very clear and concise way, or an emotionally healthy way, helps people understand you. Because if you're just shouting into the void, then people just kind of look at you and go like, oh, don't pay attention to that guy. Like, don't listen to that guy. He's just being negative.
It also, like, invalidates all the hard work these companies are putting in when you're just gonna scream at them nonsensically, where it's like they've been working with so many setbacks over the past year and a half, and, like, at least they're able to deliver these things. And again, not saying you have to love and bow down to Nintendo, but, like, just being conscious of that. It's like they can't do things the way that they did before the pandemic. And remembering that, like, when you're shouting at these people on Twitter, they're not the ones who sat in these meetings. Like, their job is social media. It's like when people go to a restaurant and they yell at the waiter when sometimes it's not their fault if a mistake
I was gonna make the
like,
same example.
Yeah, like,
I mean, that's what it is.
understand that they are not the ones sitting in the meetings coming up with this stuff. Like, their job is totally separate. They still work for the company, but it's a very different role and function. Be respectful of that. And again, giving feedback, but not just screaming at them, being like, I wish like, it would have been nice to see this, or this is something to consider for future releases. I think a lot of people would, like, correspond or like just enjoy this feature versus, how dare you not unclothe it? Like, it's totally different energy.
Well, and again, speak with your wallet. If you really don't like it, there's
Buy it.
nothing telling you have to buy it, which can make things really frustrating. I know people who didn't buy Sword and Shield because they were like, it doesn't have the things that I want. I don't think, I don't like the 2D trees. And it's kind of like, okay, like, I don't agree with you. But and I'm trying to think of it from their perspective where they may have been looking forward to this. Like, they may have been looking forward to a new Pokemon game, but they don't want to pay for something that they don't think works for them.
Right.
And it can be a frustrating experience for them too. Yeah, and that's it. Like, you do your thing. If you don't like it, I just don't buy it, and that's really tough. It's a tough thing to say, and it's a tough thing to hear.
Yeah.
Like, I've been in that position too. I don't like being told like, oh, well, then just don't buy it. But like, really, if you want to see change, then especially in a capitalist society, you just speak with your wallet. You don't have to buy it. I'm not telling you have to do anything. Nintendo's not telling you have to do anything, technically. So if you don't like the Switch OLED, if it's not working for you, you don't have to get it. And like I said, like, you can wait and see if a Switch Pro does happen. I think it'll just be whatever the next new console Nintendo has. I, for some reason, am still not suspecting that we'll get 4K. Like, I don't think anything that Nintendo does at this point for like at least another 2 consoles is going to have 4K for some reason. If they struggled with 1080p during the Wii U era, I feel like they're going to struggle with 4K. It's just my feeling about it. But I think that's it. Do we have any other like closing thoughts or anything like that?
No.
This was a grat tam.
Well, this worked for me. This will be way easier to edit. I've been doing like 2-hour episodes for the last like couple, and they've been monsters.
Yeah.
I actually
Milder topic.
Yeah. Well, hey, look, I held myself back. I could probably have done 10 questions about this, but I chose to do like 5 or 6. So look, this is an improvement for me. But thank you so much for being here on the show with me. I really enjoy talking to y'all. Y'all have been on the show previously, and I always love having you guys on here. So
Yeah, thank you.
yeah. So that is our show for today. This will probably be up on YouTube. The VOD, however you say it, will be up shortly. You'll probably find this on podcasting services soon. If you're listening to this on podcasts, then please be sure to I think Apple does like reviews and stuff. So, give us a review if you're listening to on Apple. If not, I don't know. Follow the show. If you're on Spotify, that's a thing you can do. And if you want to see the show live and with video, you can always go to twitch.tv/LaughingBoyLP to watch more episodes. We've got, we all have faces and pictures and stuff that we can show to you, and you can all see it live. But for now, until then, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And until next time, this has been DialogBOX. Oh, wait. Where are you at? I always forget to do this. This is so bad.
My room.
So where can we find you? What are you guys up to? What are y'all up to? We'll start with Sam first. Where can we find you and what are you up to?
Sure. So I do Nintendo-based videos and commentary and gameplay, and I'm on YouTube at NintendoFanGirl. I'm very active on Twitter at NintendoFanGirl, Twitch, NinFangirl, because somebody took NintendoFanGirl, and TikTok at the NintendoFanGirl, because once again, somebody took NintendoFanGirl.
You hate to see it.
Yeah, I really do.
Sab, where can we find you?
You can find me doing video game music covers on saxophone, vocals, piano on YouTube at youtube.com/SabIrene. I stream on Twitch, Pokemon chatting, piano requests, Sab_Irene, and that's all my socials, Instagram, Twitter. So yeah, if you like dorking out about music and video games, I'm a good person.
Absolutely. And Shin, where can we find you?
You can find me on YouTube and Twitter at Shinjanaytor. I do lots of like Pokemon stuff and movie reviews occasionally. And I also have 2 podcasts, The Highlight Reel, which is about movies, and I've got it was a weekly Pokemon news podcast called Podcast Monsters, but we're on a little bit of a hiatus right now just because of some stuff going on with my co-hosts, but we're hoping to bring that back very soon.
Awesome. So I'm going to edit that so I didn't pretend to end the show. I'm going to end the show now.
Wait, where do we find you?
You can find me right here at Laughingboy, twitch.tv/LaughingboyLP. Please be sure to give this channel a follow if you haven't already. You can also find me on Twitter at LaughingboyLP. You can find me everywhere under the same name, youtube.com/LaughingboyLP, where you'll find the VODs of this show as well as other shows. I do an interview series called Let's Talk, where I interview specific people about their careers, specifically people in the content creation space or the video game space, either or. And then hopefully I'll have some new content coming soon to that channel, so please be sure to subscribe to that and check it out when it happens. But until then, thank you for watching. Thank you for being in chat or lurking, however you wanted to watch this. And I will see y'all next time on DialogBOX. Goodbye. So long. Farewell. Auf Wiedersehen.
Amazing.
I don't know.